Hello, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Is everything okay? Oh, we got it. All right, thanks very much. It's always a bit of wonderment for me. Oh, Samuel, I have a book for you in a minute. I mean, when we're done, just remind me, okay? And fantastic to see everyone this morning. I always have fun with the technology. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it's got a mind of its own. But I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. It's great to see everyone. And I also want to thank all of the members and friends and volunteers from KTC for making such a great week for us for our fundraising week. And then capping it off yesterday with our day of individual practice and retreat. And it was really wonderful to see people sitting in the shrine room parts of the day and doing circumambulations and making offerings at the stupa. And you're welcome to visit the Buddhist monument, which we call a stupa, out front. Stupa is based on an Indian name for mound. And it refers to the iconographic representation of a sitting Buddha, that it's geometric shapes piled on top of each other that represents a sitting Buddha. And it's a monument that contains relics and scriptures and other holy objects. In fact, there's supposed to be musical instruments in it. So I gave Lama Adam the money, and he went to Walmart and bought a ukulele. So there's a ukulele in there, so anyhow, but all of these things represent the qualities of life, the qualities of human life, happiness and well-being and so on. So in any case, and it's really cute, as we speak, there are 2 volunteers on the roof right now putting our newest prayer flag up over on the western wing of the buildings, the one you can see from the parking lot. I just saw them sneaking into the hallway where the trapdoor for the ceiling is located. Anyway, so we'll have a new flag flying this weekend. So anyway, I'm just very grateful to everyone for all of your help during this amazing week and for your participation in all of our programs. So thank you. Now, to the talk. Today's talk is going to be a continuation of last week's talk on the practice of mantra and how mantra is related to other Buddhist practices, and how all of these practices help us to discover our own inner Buddha, our own inner Buddha nature. How do these practices help us uncover it, nurture it, and bring it to fruition? So that's a little bit of what we talked about last week. And then today I'm going to continue explaining how periods of meditation retreat help this process. Because the meditation starts the process, and when a person has the opportunity to take some time away from daily life and do short retreats, it helps them to anchor and solidify these practices. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. All of this is designed because we're going to be having a one-day retreat next Saturday. And I wanted to let people know what it's all about and why we're doing it, and invite you to come down and sit and be present. Even if you're not going to participate in the retreat itself, you're welcome to come and sit and meditate during that time. So we'll begin as we usually do, saying a prayer of good intention. For us, it is the refuge prayer, the prayer of taking refuge. We'll recite it twice in English, and then after that we'll recite it once in Tibetan. And we ask for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and come to Buddhahood and happiness. So that's the purpose of the prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, May I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Now in Tibetan. O Sanje Chudan Soji Chonam La Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suji Daji Jin Soji Be Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sanjay Druparsho. Okay, thank you. I'll recite a short prayer and then we'll begin. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche Tagi Chiwar Pede Ten Shala Kadrin Jembo Gone Je Sunte Kusum Tugging a Drup Sal Tuso. Okay, thank you. All right. Today's talk, as I say, picks up a little bit from where last week's left off. We talked last week about how the teaching of the Buddha is that all of us have Buddha nature. All of us have a mind that has the capacity to know itself and to know itself completely, and to become liberated from suffering and its causes. And so this is one of the basic teachings of the Buddha, that everyone can become a Buddha. It wasn't like there was just one Buddha and there will never be another. All of us have the capacity to become Buddha because we have a mind that can uncover its own nature and ripen its own potential. So as a result, we have this amazing potential that we need to uncover and to work with. And most of us don't even know we have it. We go through our entire life instead sort of bamboozled and fascinated by all of the products of our mind. Those products, you know, that the hype man keeps telling us about, like, you know, thoughts, feelings, emotions. The Buddha explained that all of these things, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the rest, are like waves on the top of an ocean. But the ocean itself is mind. Mind is like an ocean, and its manifestations, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, are like the waves on top of that ocean. Most of us spend most of our lives surfing. We spend most of our lives surfing, just being with the surface things, the emotions, the feelings, and so on. We just stay there, and we never really experience our mind in a deep and a powerful and profound way. We never ask the question, what is this mind? We don't ask, and because we don't ask, we never discover. And then we stay busy with all of the stories that we're telling ourselves about our lives and about the world we live in. And it's only after a person has a moment, we're going to call it an epiphany, has a moment where they realize that they are sort of tired of the exhausting back and forth of emotions. It can be really, the stories and the emotions can be kind of exhausting, and that they need a little bit of rest from that. My friends in 12-step recovery like to say, you are ready for recovery when you are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's kind of that way for those of us who want to get into meditation. When we begin to feel some dissatisfaction or discomfort with our situation, a friend may tell us, oh, maybe you practice some meditation, maybe that will help you. And so then we do it, and then we say, not a bad idea. That meditation really was helpful to us because it allows us to allow the stories to settle. We get to settle the mind just a little bit, maybe just for a few minutes. and we get a sense of what the mind is like without the chatter, without the noise. And for many of us, that's a second epiphany. First epiphany is that, I could use meditation. Second epiphany is, this isn't bad. But there are more to come. There's more to come, because after we've been practicing meditation for a while, we become aware of the stories we tell ourselves. My life is wonderful because of fill in the blank. Or my life is terrible because fill in the blank. That we are busy telling ourselves these stories all the time. And that these stories are kind of what form our life as we know it right now. But what we don't realize is that we can begin to change the story. And we find this out when we're meditating. Everybody's had this experience at least once. You're meditating, and maybe your technique of meditation is to observe the breath coming and going. Or maybe you're looking at an image of the Buddha sitting on a table in front of you, and it's a visual object. Or maybe you're listening to a sound, and that's your object. Whatever your object of meditation is, there will be a moment when a big, ugly, hairy thought arises in your mind. And for a moment, it distracts you. It takes you out of where you are and drops you in the world of that thought. If it is a good thought, it's like a happy moment. But if it's a negative thought, it makes us feel really sad. And we're kind of like caught in the moment, in the world of that thought, until we realize we're thinking. And the technique of meditation is to notice the thought, label it thinking, let it go, and return to the technique for a fresh start. And when you do that, and that big, ugly, hairy thought lets go, the very first time that you ever experience it, I will never forget the experience of it. I won't remember the thought, but the experience of being able to let it go and it stays gone. Wow. And that experience tells us something very powerful about our mind, which is that our mind can change. Because what we are holding on our mind is what we are holding on our mind. And if we take a breath, take a moment, let it settle, just let it settle. Don't reflexively, or my teacher said addictively, jump into the concepts about it all. If we don't reflexively jump into the story and watch it, it gradually disappears. And what this means is that we now have the opportunity to get inside the works and begin to change those stories from the inside. And so that was what we talked about last week, was about this process of recognizing the mind's manifestations, the emotions, the thoughts, the stories, and being able to let them go while one is meditating. But what about when we're not meditating? It's a little tougher when we're not meditating. Well, the second practice that we teach here, the first one, of course, is quiet sitting meditation, also called shamatha. The second practice we teach here is compassion meditation. Sometimes it's called lojong, or mind training. Sometimes the compassion meditation itself is called sending and taking, or tonglen. Whatever name you use for it, it's a training meditation in which, as you let your breath go out, you imagine that goodness flows out from you to the entire universe of beings. And as you breathe in, you think you remove all of the suffering from beings. And as you do this practice, your inner attitude gradually begins to change from one of me, I, self, to being slightly more aware of others. We're slightly more aware of others. And then maybe we're going to judge them just a tiny bit less, because we can begin to see that the things that make us suffer also make them suffer. And this sort of universality takes over, and we begin to say, hey, I could be a different person. I could be somebody different. I could be more kind, more loving to myself, but more kind and loving to others. And this is where we are heading in the next phase of our spiritual development. First is getting the mind to settle a bit so we can see what its potential is. And then the next is beginning to train it so that we can expand that potential and deepen the possibility of change. But the third style of meditation that we teach here, the mantra and visualization meditation, is the third part of this, where we imagine for a short period of time that we are a Buddha. Just for a short period of time, we use our imagination to imagine that our being is not this kind of lump of flesh and blood, but that we're actually made of light, and we have the appearance of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. And this empty and light-made body of a Buddha is a symbolic stand-in for the description of the nature of mind. Because when you read about the nature of mind in Buddhist meditation texts, it explains this awareness that we have as being empty luminosity. Empty luminosity, that is what this awareness that we possess is. Well, but how can you meditate on that? It's not easy at first. It's conceptually a little bit hard to take in. But His Holiness the Dalai Lama was talking about this a number of years ago, and I got lucky enough to go to one of his talks. And he said that when you visualize yourself as a Buddha and you recite that Buddha's mantra, you're meditating on the empty, luminous nature of your mind symbolically. Symbolic meditation on the nature of your mind. And he said, whereas if you tell a person to meditate on their awareness, it's often too subtle a subject for them to think about. But he said, if you tell them to imagine themselves as a Buddha or Bodhisattva and that they're made of light and empty and luminous, he said they could do that. And then at the very end of the meditation, he said, what do you do at the end of a mantra meditation? We talked about this last week. You dissolve everything into utter emptiness and let your mind rest there for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, before you start thinking again. It's a very short meditation. And he said, and in that way, people become used to the idea of themselves as a Buddha, and then they rest in mind in its own nature, just briefly, just enough so that they have a sense of what that is. And they gain confidence about how their mind really is beneath all the stories, beneath all the thinking, beneath all the drama. And so that's a full summary of what we talked about last week. Now, this week I wanted to mention what retreat is and why people do retreats on mantra. Why do people do mantra retreats? Why do they do it? This goes back to, I'm going to tell you 2 stories. One story is about a princess of ancient India who contracted a terrible disease and got driven into exile and turned to mantra meditation as her comfort. So I'm going to tell you her story. And then I'm going to tell you one little story from my life, which is when I was a lab rat. I was a lab rat. 2007, Princeton University, and my brain is being studied because I'm a 10,000-hour meditator, and so they were looking for 10,000-hour meditators to look at their brains. And the researcher asked me a very interesting question about mantra meditation, and I'll tell you that story as well. But let's start with the Indian princess. In ancient India, it is said there was one of the city-states, the king of one of the city-states of India, had a daughter who contracted leprosy. And in those days, it was a mysterious disease. They didn't understand what caused it, and they thought it was evil, and they thought the people who had it had bad karma. And so often the people were, at the worst, they were killed, but at the very least, they were exiled to live alone. And so this princess was exiled. And I can only imagine the feeling of being forced to live in the forest. I'm sure she was provided for because her father would not have left her without food or a shelter. But the loneliness, I can just imagine the feeling of isolation and loneliness. We all felt a little bit of that during the pandemic. But she felt it incredibly strongly because here she was, she had a horrible disease and she was destined to die alone in this forest. Because she was a Buddhist, she felt some comfort when she found a stone statue in the forest of a Buddha. And it was a stone statue of Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion. He's often depicted as having 4 arms, which stand for the 4 immeasurables: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, and so on. But this was one of the 2-armed Chenrezigs. And she fell in love with the statue, and it reminded her she was not alone in the forest. So she prayed fervently to Chenrezig. And she took up the practice of his mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, which is his epithet, because Mani means jewel and Padme means lotus. And when you look at iconography, Chenrezig is holding a jewel that symbolizes your Buddha nature, and a lotus, which is symbolic of love and compassion. And so she practiced this mantra and this visualization of herself as being made of light and so on. And she practiced it diligently day and night. And she made the decision to fast from food every other day as a part of her faithfulness to Chenrezig. And so after a period of weeks, months, years, I don't know which period of time it was, gradually the leprosy began to heal. The sores began to heal. And her limbs became useful again. And she essentially was cured miraculously through her practice. And after that, she, because she had lived essentially as a nun in the forest, and taking the vows of not killing, not stealing, not committing sexual misconduct, and so forth and so on, because she had held this pure discipline of a nun for all those years and practiced compassion and practiced the mantra practice. These 3 things, I guess you could say the practices of the 3 yanas, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, if you want to get all Buddhist and technical about it. These things brought about her healing. She was incredibly grateful. And she began to return to society and began to teach this as a practice. And so this nun, who became known in Tibetan as Gelongma, or monastic, Palmo, the word is in Tibetan, means the glorious woman who was a renunciate. So Gelongma Palmo's practice eventually became associated with the practice of the 1,000-armed Chenrezig. It's a very long story about the 1,000-armed Chenrezig, that when Chenrezig first generated the bodhisattva mind and took the bodhisattva vow, he said, I'm going to remain behind in samsara until everyone's been liberated. If I give up this vow, may my body shatter into 1,000 pieces. This is his origin story. And so what happens is, of course, he gets discouraged because, have you looked at the world? When he checked on the world and the universe and saw that he was not doing a great job at liberating beings, he became discouraged and burst into 1,000 pieces. The story goes that his guru, the Buddha Amitabha, put him back together with more hands. in order to benefit more sentient beings. These stories, I know, they're a little difficult to grasp. But even if you just take them symbolically, the story is the same, that when we redouble our efforts to be compassionate, more beings are benefited. And in fact, this is a lovely story. A friend of mine who had small children in a Dharma class, one of our Dharma classes a number of years ago, he wrote a little poem that I can't remember anything but the title. And it's like, we are Chenrezig's 1,000 hands. Each of us is one of the 1,000 hands of Chenrezig, which I think is a lovely idea. Each of us is one of these hands that brings comfort, that resolves pain and suffering for beings. I just think it's lovely. So, next week, we're going to do a short version of Gelongma Palmo's retreat. This short 2-day retreat is going to be briefed down to 1 day, and we're going to do it on Saturday. And the people who participate in the retreat, there's a sign-up online, and somebody told me yesterday that the sign-up was not working. It's working now. So anybody who tried to sign up yesterday, I'm sorry. There was a glitch, but it's okay now. But people who sign up for this practice will be participating in a half-day fast. They will be fasting from lunch on Saturday until breakfast on Sunday. And but they will be doing 4 sessions of Chenrezig mantra and visualization practice using the sadhana of the 1,000-armed Chenrezig. Lama Tom will be the Vajra master for this, and I will be the chant master. And then we'll have a team of people working with Julaine on the shrine, and we're going to do this chanting meditation pretty much all day Saturday. We start at 6:30 in the morning, and we'll go till about 5:30 in the afternoon, with a break for a magnificent lunch that will be all vegetarian. And then after lunch, there will be, you can drink liquids, tea, juice, that kind of thing. And then the fast will be broken the following morning when the sun rises. I love how the Tibetans judge sunrise. They say, when you can see the lines on your hand. When it's light enough to see the lines on your hand. That's dawn. So it's from dawn to dawn. It's dawn Saturday to dawn Sunday. When this is done as a 2-day retreat, the completion of the retreat is very fancy, very fancy. But we will not have the fancy part of that. But we will share the blessing water that was consecrated by all that mantra. We will share that next Sunday morning, all day, because as long as it lasts, we'll give little bits of water. Because what's going to happen is that all of the people will be visualizing that they're Chenrezig, and that all of the objects on the shrine are Chenrezig, and that the water in the vase is blessed by Chenrezig. And by doing all of this practice, they're basically transforming their world for a short period of time. This is the value of retreat practice, is to take some time away from our everyday stories and our everyday reality and try on a different story, a different reality for a few hours. We'll try on the reality of being Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And we'll dedicate this practice to the suffering in the world, of which, as you know, there is so much right now. And so what people tell me after participating in a retreat is that by participating in the retreat, they actually do get to forget about their troubles for a few hours, and it's very relieving for them. And that they get to try on the reality of being loving, compassionate, and wise. And the other thing that happens in this practice is that by fasting, people say, why do this hardship? What's the point of doing the hardship part? Not eating for a half a day or more than half a day. Why? What's the point? And really, one of my first lamas, Lama Ganga, what he told us was, he said, most of us go through our daily lives fairly comfortably. He said, even the people who don't have a lot of money, they generally have like a roof over their heads and something to eat. He said, but how do they become aware of beings who don't have anything? And the fast is meant to bring us to an awareness of beings who lack what we have. They lack the gifts that we have. There are some beings that don't get a chance to eat every day. Some beings that don't have a chance to drink water, clean water every day. And we don't really even think about this. But when we feel the hardship, there's a prayer that's recited. It's called Prayer for Victory Over Samsara. You remember samsara, that's the Buddha's name for this cyclic existence, right, of suffering that we live in this world. And Buddhahood is said to be the state of liberation from samsara suffering. And so this prayer is titled Prayer for Victory Over Samsara. And it says, by feeling this hunger, may we liberate all those who are hungry. By feeling this thirst, may we liberate all those who are thirsty. And if we are tired, may we liberate all of those who are exhausted, and so forth and so on. And so by taking on this chosen hardship for a fixed period of time, we become aware of their suffering, and we vow to do something about it. And these are not empty promises. You might think, oh, well, that's all well and good, but it's just kind of like, it's wishful thinking, and it doesn't really have an impact. Well, from my experience, it actually does have an impact, because by our doing meditation and by our doing mantra and practices, we change our little corner of the world, our little place, our little home in the world. Those of you who are familiar with the mandala principle, the idea, have you seen the sand mandalas made by the traveling monastics that depict palaces of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas? We're in one right now, as a matter of fact, because all of the decorations in this room are meant to evoke the idea of a celestial palace. The 4 pillars stand for the 4 noble truths. The 8 beams stand for the Eightfold Noble Path. All of the drapery that is depicted in painting, or in this case wallpaper, it is meant to depict the richness of our own inner qualities of being a Buddha. Our own Buddha inner qualities are depicted by these beautiful ornaments. So we are said to have our own little mandala, because the literal meaning of mandala is center and surrounding. Center and surrounding. We all have our own little mandala. Our family, our coworkers, our house, the things we have. That is our mandala. And right now, we might say that our mandala might be nice, but it's a little samsaric. Anybody has to make a house payment or to buy food for the kids or whatever, you know what this means. This is all about. So, but there is a mandala depicted in the Chenrezig practice, and by creating this imaginary mandala, we slowly can begin to manifest goodness in our own mandala of our family and our home and our city and our place. So in any case, retreat allows us to unplug from our usual stories and to plug in instead to a higher reality for a short period of time that gives us a blessing and confidence in our own Buddha nature. So I wanted to keep today's talk a little bit shorter, but I do want to tell that other story. The other story is about 2007, when I went to two universities. I went to the Princeton University in New Jersey, and I went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And they looked at my brain in a functional MRI machine. I spent hours in MRI. And it kind of like, I tell you what, you be exposed to magnets for that long, and like, you be weird. I was kind of like walking around, it's like, okay, this is very strange. But needless to say, it was interesting because they asked me to meditate while I am being examined. So it's like really, it was fascinating and interesting. But the researcher asked me an unusual question. The researcher came from the Theravadan tradition of Buddhism. And those of you, I won't get into the whole thing, but there are two major divisions in Buddhism based on history and scriptures. The oldest group are called Theravada, or the path of the elders, because they're the ones that hold to the very first scriptures that were written from the Buddhist teachings, and they're mainly monastic. But then there's a second group that developed around the 3rd century due to the work of the Indian scholar Nagarjuna, who introduced a set of Mahayana scriptures, and it's called the Mahayana. So there's the Theravada and the Mahayana. Those are the two main divisions. Well, the researcher was Theravadan, and he had never really encountered too many Tibetan Buddhists because we're Mahayana. So he'd never really encountered us. And he didn't really know that much about us. And so he said, oh, well, I've got a really weird question for you. You know, like, you're a 10,000-hour meditator, but like, you told me you didn't like sit in classical awareness meditation for all those 10,000 hours, that you spent the greater part of that doing mantra practice? How is that meditation? And he said, furthermore, he said, where are the Tibetans who like stay in caves and meditate day and night? I don't hear anything about those kind of people. Don't the Tibetans do that? And I had to say, I had no idea. I did not know the answer to that question. And I said, well, can I get back to you? And he said, sure. So I go to ask my teacher, because, you know, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder of this center, was very open to all the questions that any of us asked, right? And he always had a good answer. So I said, okay, Rinpoche, the researcher's Theravadan, and they're used to like forest monks and nuns who go live in the forest or go and they spend all day in meditation, quiet meditation from morning to night and into the night. He said, well, where's our people doing that? He said, well, that's simple. He said, they're all doing mantra. And I said, what? And he said, mantra meditation is shamatha meditation. It's just using a different subject. And that kind of like blew my mind a little bit. And I went back and told the researcher, and he said, that still doesn't explain it to me. Because he couldn't conceive that mantra meditation was shamatha. He couldn't conceive of it because it wasn't what he learned. But when I really reflected on it, it was true. Because whether you are meditating on the breath awareness, or on a sound, or on a visual object, the technique is the same. You place your attention on the object, and when your attention wanders, you bring it back. It's exactly the same. If you're meditating on a visualized object or on the sound of a mantra, same thing. And in fact, by meditating on our body, speech, and mind as being made of light and empty, we're essentially meditating on the unity of form and emptiness, sound and emptiness, and awareness and emptiness simultaneously by doing mantra practice. So in a way, the the practice of mantra allows us to rest in a state of awareness that is similar to the states of awareness used and cultivated by other meditators. We just don't think of it that way. We don't like grade it, you know? Which grade of absorption are you in? Are you in this grade or in this grade or in this grade? We don't do that. We just practice. And then the results, hopefully, show themselves over a period of time. So anyway, that was that little story about being a lab rat. I have to say, I met some really great people being a lab rat. And those of you who met Dr. Julie when she came for COSI, by the way, she's coming back next year, so she's going to do more of her programs on meditation, compassion, and the experience of awe. COSI loved her stuff, so she's coming back next year. I met her at the University of Wisconsin at Madison because she experimented on me. That was pretty cool. So you meet brain scientists sometimes in this work. It's just unusual. Well, I think this is probably enough stories for today, but what I want to let everyone know is that next Saturday, we will be here from 6 o'clock in the morning on, and we will have someone on, I think we'll have someone on the back door if you want to come and sit while we're here. I don't know that we have front door greeters for next week. If we don't, you can at least ring the bell in the back. And you can come up and just sit while we're chanting. Now, some people don't like to meditate while people are chanting. It's a little difficult for them. And if that's the case, well, then you can go and sit in the classroom downstairs and have some silent meditation time. But in any case, you're welcome to come and spend time here. I don't think we can feed you lunch because I think we only have enough for ourselves. But if you want to bring your own vegetarian sack lunch and sit and have lunch and just have a retreat day next Saturday, you're welcome to come. Well, I understand that there's going to be like a drawing here in about 10 or 15 minutes for fabulous prizes. But before we do that, I want to see if anybody has questions, because we have 10 minutes or so that we can spend doing questions about retreat or about Gelong Mapalmo and her special fasting practice. Well, I'll answer whatever you've got. We have 2 question microphones, so feel welcome to ask the questions. You want to answer them too, you can.
Hi, Lama Kathy.
Good morning.
Less of a question and more of a, kind of a question, kind of a comment. So this comes from Zen teaching, Dogen Zenji. And I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said not to focus on attainment within your practice, because no matter what the practice is, it's still the same. It still has to deal with working on returning to it and focusing on what you're doing. So that kind of is what I'm relating to what you're saying with the Theravadan monk when you asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche and he said, mantra meditation is the same as shamatha.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing, just in a different focus.
Exactly.
And then I was thinking of thoughts of attainment might be sort of based in the 8 worldly winds with gain and loss. So. Yeah.
I really appreciate you drawing those comparisons because I do think that we can, as human beings, we can like turn everything, even something wonderful, into something that's not so wonderful, right? We can kind of tarnish just about anything because of our confusion, our human confusion. And we can even turn our spiritual practice into some kind of competition, either with ourselves or with others. And I feel that anything that we can do to disengage from that kind of competition. I really love that quote. That's a fabulous quote. Not to worry about attainment, but just to practice with every fiber of your being. I think that's a wonderful way to think about it. And you're right, because thinking about the word attainment or attaining specific states in meditation and things like this, it becomes a little bit overwhelming for people, and it becomes another story, right? Another confusion story. And what he was bringing up was something called the 8 worldly concerns. And I the only way I can remember them is by rhyming them. You know, pleasure and pain, loss and gain, infamy and fame, and credit and blame. Okay, so these are as 4 sets of opposites. And we're mostly like, you know, drugged from one to the other and one to the other and one to the other. And that's why they call them the 8 worldly concerns, because it seems to circumscribe our whole life. So thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So now, yeah.
Thank
morning.
you.
Yeah, good morning.
I wondered if you had any advice for those of us who might be newer to mantra meditation and receive some transmissions and then feeling a little nervous about jumping in with the group.
I think I understand what you're saying. I want to apologize, by the way, to everyone. I don't get my hearing aids until next month. Oh, no, my hearing aids are coming in 2 weeks, and then I'll be able to hear things clearly. I am going to have to ask you to repeat your question.
Yeah, of course.
I couldn't quite make it out.
Yeah, I wondered if you had any advice or encouragement for those of us who are newer to mantra meditation and received a transmission and now sort of getting ready to take the leap.
Got it. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I understand. I understand like the sort of tension of it, right? You know, the little bit of, there's a little stress in learning anything new, right? Because we grow up and we want to do everything well. We want to be respectful to it. We want to be respectful to it, and we want to do it well. So it's coming from a sincere place. That's the first thing. Is that when we have these kinds of concerns, they're not coming from a bad place. They're coming from a good place, because we sincerely want to do well. And then, but then I also remind people of what my teacher told me, which is that the very first, he said, when we first start doing meditation, he said, we call it practicing meditation. And he said, and there's a reason for this. And that's because at first, we're just sort of going through the motions and trying to coordinate everything. Because think about when you first started doing shamatha, you had to kind of like, there's a lot of parts. You have to like follow the breath in, follow the breath out, count, you know, whatever parts of the technique. And it's like a little bit, at first, I don't know about you, but for me, it was really disorganized. But it gets better over time. And I think the same is true of mantra meditation. At first, it will seem like too many things to try to keep track of all at once. And so the example that I encourage people to hold, I give them an example, and I tell them, just hold this example for a while and see if it fits. And that is putting on a play. Putting on a play. So when you put on a play, you don't just like go out and put on a play, and it doesn't like happen right away. First, everybody has to learn their lines. And then, after everybody learns their lines, the director has to tell them where to stand on the stage and how to move. And then finally, when the whole thing is almost ready, they have to begin to think about and feel the character's emotions and bring those out in acting. So nobody like starts, out with a play and it's all ready. Everybody has to kind of wander around a bit and find their feet with the lines and the movement and the emotion. So it's like that with learning a sadhana. When you receive the reading transmission, for example, of a sadhana, this is a practice that goes way back to when Buddhism first came from India to Tibet, and they worried about like the pedigree of the teaching. What did it really come from Buddha and stuff like that? So they developed the habit of reading the texts to the students so they would know that they were getting the pure thing. And so even today, there is a custom of reading these prayer texts to a group of students to bless them so that they can study and practice the text. So we still do that. In fact, I did it yesterday for somebody. So once we received the reading transmission, it's like somebody handed us the script. And now we can study the script and begin to see what our part is in it. And we begin to work with the meaning of the words. I have everybody learn the English first, and by learn, I don't mean memorize. I mean, they just become familiar with the meaning of the words in English. And then after they become familiar with the meaning of the words, then I tell them to work on the visualizations. And then over time, those two will be able to be keyed together, and they'll be able to be more coordinated. But at first, it will be a little bit uncoordinated. And for example, for some practices, I tell people to read the text first and then close their eyes and do the visualization. It's much easier when you do it serially rather than when you try to do it all at once. And so I just tell people to give themselves some time and some space to practice it. And that, does that help?
It does, thank you.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's kind of how you start. You start that way, and you recognize that it's going to take a while. I love what one of my teachers told me. He said, you will never be able to visualize as clearly as you can see something with your eyes. He says, number one, it's impossible. And number two, it's impossible. Why? Why? Because when you are seeing something, you have two things operating at the same time. Your eyes, your physical, the organ of sight is conveying information to your mind. And there's an intermediary called the visual consciousness that takes in that information and delivers it to the mental consciousness, which is part of the process. And then that experiences the object. But when you are visualizing, you do not have the help of the visual consciousness. You don't have the help. You don't have that help, so it's not going to be as clear. And he said, and not only that, he said, if your shamatha is a little start and stop and up and down, he said, your visualization is going to be a little start and stop and up and down. He said, so don't expect it to be clear at first. He said, just work on it gradually by looking at the pictures and then closing your eyes and trying to draw it from top to bottom and back up again. And then slowly you'll get a sense of the construction and the symbolism of the iconography.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. And if you have other questions, we can talk more later. But yeah, and that's why when we do the retreat that we're doing next week, there's going to be it's going to be a half an hour of reciting Om Mani Padme Hum, a half an hour, and that gives you a lot of time to close your eyes and try to work on the visualization. So that's, it's kind of like that. And next.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I think I have a quick question. When I see a female Buddha statue, I guess I was assuming that's always green Tara, but could it be the Galamma Palmo you were talking about?
Oh, good question. Galamma Palmo was the person,
Okay.
the Indian princess who had leprosy, who went into the forest, and she's the one who invented this fasting practice of Chenrezig.
Okay.
Now, could she have been an emanation of Tara? Maybe.
Okay.
Possibly, yes, it's possible.
So whenever we see a female Buddha statue, it's always green Tara.
Not always,
No?
because when you hear the teachings on it, there's pretty much all of the female deities trace their stories back to the perfection of wisdom, prajna paramita. So it will either be Tara or Vajrayogini, or these are the three female forms of enlightenment that are spoken of the most often in Vajrayana practice. Although if you keep looking, there are 8 female Buddhas and 8 female bodhisattvas,
Okay.
and 8 male Buddhas and 8 male bodhisattvas. So they're all.
Very cool.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so many of the female manifestations of awakening do go back to Tara. Their stories go back to Tara. Some of the stories go back to Vajrayogini. Some of the stories go back to Prajna Paramita.
Okay, cool.
Prajna Paramita is called the mother of all Buddhas, but then so is Vajrayogini. So we've got quite a few, but I'm not sure that was it. Was that responsive to your question?
Well, yeah, very much so. No,
Did
and I
I-
like that we have an equal number of
Yeah.
bodhisattvas and Buddhas. That's lovely. Thank you.
All right. No, thanks. Yeah, we'll try and work on that later. We'll talk more about that later, because somebody asked me for a teaching on Prajnaparamita, and I realized that I know like virtually nothing about it. So I guess that means I have to start talking to my Lama friends and learning more. Well, because of time, we have to stop. I don't know. I don't know what the next process is, but let's see. Bethany, you're here. Can you check? Oh, Chuck is here. I'm sorry. I thought I saw him out in the hall, and then there he is. Hi, Chuck. Come on up.
So next up, I guess question is, do we close this session?
Sure.
Or
Oh,
do we
good
go
idea.
is the raffle like in
I
the
know.
mandala?
I know. I tell you what, the raffle is in the mandala, but in case people don't wish to stay for the drawing, we could go ahead and wrap up. Yeah, thank you for that. Sometimes I just need a little structure. So what we'll do here is we'll gather together all the goodness that we accumulated in this session, and we'll dedicate it to all the beings suffering in the world, of which there are so many, making the aspiration that all are liberated and become their very best selves. We'll start with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Greatly appreciated. So now I turn things over to Chuck. You have a microphone here? Yeah, you want to grab that?
That's good, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All
Okay.
right. I had a few more tickets to
You have a few
add.
more tickets.
Yeah.
Just put them in there.
So I guess,
Explain what happened.
Explaining-
Explain
all
why
right.
we are
Sure.
here. And
All
I'm
right.
gonna play with that a little
Please.
bit. Yeah, okay, yeah.
so
I'm
hopefully,
just imagining it's a prayer wheel.
there you go.
I'll have to put mantras on this. Yeah.
Well, I was joking earlier that you often say we have everybody that came here thinking they'd left the Catholic, escaped the Catholic Church. We sort
Or
of have
the
a lot
church
of
of
the
their
things,
childhood, yeah,
But we still have all the things, right? We have saints. There's actually a Buddhist form of confession, right? And so I thought it was kind of funny that we also had a
Buddhist
like
raffle.
a bingo dome here.
No, I think I'm going to draw the line at bingo. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No offense, anyone. I hope.
No offense. Yeah.
Okay, so we have our fund drive is concluding today. It's been very successful. I guess I want to. Michael just left, but Michael DeBonis, our secretary on the board, just had a lot of experience because he works with public television. So he had some great ideas about how to run it was just a week-long fund drive. So we kind of collapsed it so we're not bugging people, perpetually into a week, and kind of pushed out a lot of messages by email and through social media and the like. Well, part of the whole scheme was to also have some beautiful raffle prizes that Lama Kathy brought back from KTD. So basically, everyone who is already a member or any kind of monthly donor has at least one ticket in here. And then if you were a new donor of any level, then you've got 3 tickets in here. And if you were previously donating and upped your amount, you've got 3 tickets in there. So I guess what we're going to do is spin the wheel. and then pick
I'm on
tickets,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind saying a little bit about the prizes, or do you
Oh,
want to
yeah,
go
sure.
through those one at a time? Or?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
We have a beautiful image of Chenrezig that was blessed during the Kaju Munlam in September in KTD Monastery. And then the president of KTD, Lama Lodro Lamo, gave us a few other gifts. But we also have a treasure vase that was blessed by one of the monasteries in China. We have a set of malas, and we have a small prayer wheel that I was given by Lama Lodro Lamo, and also there's a Karmapa dream flag. The thing I need to talk about this Karmapa dream flag. Interestingly enough, I could not find the brand new one, so I'm going to give you today one of our used prayer flags, but I'm going to give the gift receiver this, but a new one will come to your doorstep. So that's
Okay. So, I guess one other thing to say is people don't have to be here to win.
They do not have to be
right.
here.
And the only thing we didn't say overtly that we probably should have is I think people will be limited to one gift apiece, right? If
How do you feel about that? Do you feel okay about that?
Yeah.
Everybody feel okay? Okay. You feel okay?
Okay.
All right. Because
Please.
I have no tickets.
What's
in
the
here.
first prize?
The first prize will be the mala set.
Okay.
Okay. So
All
this
right.
is going to be the mala.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Stop moving. How do we make it stop moving?
Yeah.
I don't think we do. So we're going to have to take a moment.
Okay.
We got to make it open. Okay. There we go. All right.
Okay.
And so, Leona May, our friend from our member from Connecticut. So
Okay.
Leona May wins
Very
that
nice.
one.
So we'll get
and so
to her.
that is the I'll mark on the outside that is the mala set.
Oh, good. You're going to mark it.
Oh, you mark it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a pen.
Good.
I got
Thank
a pen. Okay. Whoop. Way to go, Leona May. Okay, and so then the next gift is the flag.
Okay.
Is the flag. So let's
Okay.
see. Uh-oh,
Yeah,
the
I
ticket
think
fell out.
I think it's
Okay, so that one, Karen Maurer
Okay.
wins the flag.
Okay.
Okay, wow, so it just kind of popped right out, didn't it? Okay. And I forgot the order of the next two.
Okay.
I believe that it was the prayer wheel next, and then the treasure vase, and then the statue.
Okay.
That was my memory of it. So let's see who will be the prayer wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. Right. Okay. Prayer wheel is. Oh, David and Andrew. Way to go. Okay. Okay. That's great. Yeah, they're family members.
Okay.
Okay. Then now this will be the treasure vase.
Okay.
Oh, Angel and Kelly.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. All right.
Okay, treasure. You have treasure coming your way.
Okay. This is yours. Okay.
Okay. All right. And then the last one is for the Buddha, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, this is the.
Yeah, it's going quite well. Oh, I think he's here. Is he here? Ron Hess.
Ron Hess. Here he is.
Hey, all right. Way to
Ron.
go. So, yay, very
Yeah.
good. All right. All right. Statue. Well,
So.
I,
Yeah.
congratulations to all the winners. But did you report how we did?
So a little bit like we talked earlier. So Michael's idea was great, worked very well. We added at least 20 new people, and some mix of members and other levels of monthly donations. So it was a great success. It kind of doing this sort of forced me to take a close look at things in that way. And there are more than 100 people who are donating regularly to support the center. So of course we're always hungry for more, and if we have more, we can do some things we've been talking about. But thanks everybody who does contribute, and even more importantly, your time and presence with us in this community is what we're really most anxious to have. So, anything? from you?
Yeah, yesterday I was telling Chuck that it tickled me that there were 20 new regular donors because yesterday we collected 20,000 mantras. So I thought that was really interesting, so 20 seems to be, yes, Sally? When can people sign up to volunteer?
Now
Woo.
that is
that is our next thing.
You know what? I feel like that she was kind of a plant in the audience, I feel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we,
Head of the greeter team.
very good question, because our sign-up sheets were sort of out of circulation for a minute. Now they are out just outside these doors against the wall, like straight as you go out. There's a few different clipboards out there with options to sign up for a few of our main categories of volunteerism. Sally reminds me, thank you, Sally, that we're always hungry too for folks to help out in that way. We're an entirely a volunteer organization, so that's another way folks can lean in. So it's great if you're able financially to help that way, but there are other ways to lean in, and we'd be delighted to have your help as a volunteer as well.
And of course, even if these things are not possible for you to do, there is one more thing that you can do, and that is come here and practice.
Yeah.
Because if you come here and because the way I put it is, you bring your sincerity with you when you come here. Every time you come here, whether it's for a Dharma program, or to sit and meditate together, or to attend an event, or whatever, or to be part of the mantra reciting teams. I mean, when I came in today, there were 8 people in the introduction to meditation room. There were 8 people chanting Chenrezig, and there were like 30 plus people in this room meditating together. You bring your sincerity and goodness here with you, and you leave your blessings here by practicing here and being part of community here. So however you want to participate, we're here for you, and we thank you. So thank you. We dedicate all of your merit to Om Mani Padme Hum. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Soundman.